just let it flow. Oh goodness, why is that over there? Oh, now it's being recorded.
Yeah, it's on.
Okay.
Here we are. We're back.
Episode
Made it.
36.
Yes, we're back, and we're consistently doing the work, right, Nate?
Yeah. Oh yeah. In this episode, we're going to be talking about relationships.
Yes. Everybody, what seems to be everybody's biggest challenge, or at least one of the top.
Well, that's why we're here. Because you're right. In modern society, it's one of the biggest challenges I think a lot of people face is being with another person. And I guess I'll start it off by saying I think a lot of that has to do with I think another thing that comes to mind is expectations.
100%. Yes.
So because you're two totally different people, so you have your view and that person has their view, and the whole point of a relationship is to have common views. They may not be exactly the same, but have a common goal. Without the challenging part is to have a common goal without expectations of every little step. Like you were just talking about off camera, like letting it flow, letting it be. Like don't worry about what's going to happen or what happened 10 years ago.
hmm It's like we were saying, nature, the rest of nature, which of course we are a part of, the rest of nature does its thing effortlessly and naturally, and it just does what it needs to do. Humans, like I was saying off camera, want to label everything and everyone. They want to build these structures and these things to give them a quote unquote safe feeling when you can just let things be natural and feel safe within yourself, not because of another person, right? Not because of an expectation you set on another person. I believe it's the Buddhists that say the reason you suffer is because you have expectations, right? You have attachment. So I tell people, don't have attachment to an outcome, don't have attachment to the way a person's supposed to be. Of course, you can talk about like, hey, we're in this monogamous relationship, so we're going to be together. We're not going to go cheat on each other, so on and so forth. Perfect. It's an agreement, right? And then hopefully both parties uphold that. Sometimes people falter, and then that's where you decide if that's something that you want to stay in or not. But again, expectations will cause you to suffer. Like for me, I've learned, if I'm in a relationship, it's allow it to be very natural. Like I don't expect anything of you. I don't need to put a title on you. I don't need to control you. I want you just to be you and allow me just to be me. And let's just let this thing unfold the way it wants to. Right. Because kind of like you said, I mean, it's two different souls coming together, trying to figure out how to now cohesively live, not as one, but like, around each other all the time, which means you're going to have to accept the other person's goofiness, and as well as your own, and not judge people for that, and just be like, cool, you know, you are who you are, I am who I am, and I love you for that. That's what comes down. I think we talked. I'm not sure if you and I talked about it off camera last time, but it comes down to unconditional love, right? Unconditional love is like I love you for everything you are, and even when you will at some point fuck up, and it may be the most minor thing, but I'm still going to love you through it, and we're going to keep going. Um, yeah, I have more to say, but I'll let you chime in on that.
Well, I think that like I was talking about off camera, the way I have a different perspective on relationships now. I've been married for 11 years and it hasn't been all sunshine and rainbows, I'll tell you that.
What, it has it?
but but like we were talking last week, it took us 11 years to get to where we are now, So it takes both people to make it work. Like, but one thing that has changed my perspective a little bit is, we talk about relationships, and it just kind of dawned on me one day, because they say you're supposed to have a relationship with God.
hmm
The way I view my marriage, like I'm my relationship with God is different from everybody else's, right? We have our own unique existence. But at the same time, when you have two people that come together, the thing that sticks out in my mind is God loves us and wants a relationship with us. So when we mess up or we're acting the fool, you know, God doesn't just like, all right, you're on fire now. Goodbye.
Yeah.
You know? So that's what changed my mind. I'm like, okay, if someone's annoying me or we're not agreeing on something, like I tend to sit back and have the thought, like, what would God do? Like, he's not just gonna light the whole village on fire and like, all right, you're done. You know what I mean? So it's like having more. A lot of people go into relationships with expectations based on like Hollywood or some romantic comedy they watched, or they watch a show.
Disney movies.
Yeah, and they're like, "Oh, I want it to be just like that." And that's not real life. Real life is you're going to have challenges. And the biggest thing is not many people in our society or the world are really conditioned to listen to understand. We're more combative. Where and then you combine that into a relationship, you're like, "Oh, this is, it also has to relate to pride and ego. You got to kind of take that out a little bit, kind of simmer that part down too, and be like, okay, I hear what you're saying. Do I understand what you're saying? And do I understand where you're coming from? Because like we talked about just now off camera, something I will say out loud to my wife, I'll be like, hold on, I'm processing this. Because you want to listen to understand, even if the other person's projecting something like, okay, why? But it does get frustrating when one or the other is the only one that's aware of that.
So I think that was going to be my question to you is, and I kind of asked you this off camera, but um, I understand like being in it for the long game and really trying to work on it. So, but if you're consistently working on yourself, and not that the other person isn't working on themselves, right? But you know that you're both aware of your stuff. Like you're the party that, okay, I've been working on these things. I don't respond the way I used to. I don't just randomly start a problem. Like I can literally just be in peace majority of the time. But the partner is aware of this internal battle, right? And still continuing to like allow that fear, like we talked about, to just overtake, themselves and interject it into the relationship on like on a fairly regular basis. Um, and so it's like, at what point are you like, okay, this is draining my energy. This we end up in the same endless loop, and there's nothing actually happening, but it's a person living from fear of the past and fear of what might happen in the future. So at what point do we say, okay, like this isn't working, or we need space, or whatever it is, right? Um, Obviously, you and I mean, like my current situation, I just recently left a relationship, and we've still been trying to be friends, but that's the scenario I'm giving is basically, there's this fear there, and um, it comes from well before me, and then we had a few like scenarios in our relationship, nothing like not infidelity or anything like that, but just little like things of not being 100% truthful about little stuff, and that just fueled the fire, and both of us came in with both having a fear of being hurt in a relationship, right? But I identified with myself. You've been carrying this fear since you were hurt when you were 14, right? And so once I identified where it originated, I was like, I am not going to carry this anymore. I'm going to release this. And kind of like we talked about on last episode, is I had to pattern interrupt every time my mind wanted to say, "Hey, this is happening," even though there's nothing happening. And then it wants to create a story around that to try to justify why I feel that way. I just kept interrupting that and letting that go, releasing it, until it became a space where I'm like, look, if you're going to be in a relationship, you're going to have to trust and you have to believe that everything's always working out for your highest good, and allow it to just unfold the way it naturally, the way it wants to. And that freed me up from the fear of the what ifs. right? And so sharing that with my ex-partner, like, hey, you have a very similar situation. You were hurt in your first relationship very young, and you've carried a fear, and I see it blatantly with you. That's why other people like are a threat to you and all these things. You know, it's like, okay, so the awareness is there, I think, but the shifting that I feel like I'm everybody has, everybody takes their own time and their own amount of time to get to certain places, right? Totally fine. But again, my I guess that the hard part is at what point do you say, okay, this disturbs our energy on a regular basis? Like we need to take space. And then that's where, I've heard many stories where people they break up, they go and really do work on themselves for a while, and then they come back together at a later, they reconvene at a later time, and the relationship goes completely different. You know what I mean? But
Well,
that's going to have to be the ability to do a lot of work on yourself.
well, I think I think there is truth in the adage, absence makes the heart grow fonder,
Mhm.
right? And I think that it's it's challenging because but at the same time it's challenging, but God has you experiencing this for a reason.
To grow
So,
me.
huh?
And for her to grow her. But I mean, to
Yeah.
grow myself, like we talked about off camera, a relationship is a mirror to you on the things that you need to figure out with yourself, right? Most people like to point at each other and be like, "Hey, you're the one that's fucked up." It's like, well, we both have our stuff, and this is mirroring to us what we need to figure out within ourselves. Then you can have a healthy relationship when you have figured out yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's challenging to say like when is the quote unquote cutoff, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Because that varies, that could vary based on the different dynamics of a relationship. Like, of course, if it gets to the point where it's unhealthy and crazy and you can't work through it, then yeah. But like for what I do a lot of times is, like I said, it took me and my wife 11 years to get to where we are now. Most of the mess ups were my own.
Hmm.
So that took, for me, that took a lot of inner work, a lot of that shadow work, a lot of talking to God.
Hmm.
That's what changed me the most, honestly, if I'm being honest, is like I just like how I said earlier, when I think about relationships, I think about my own relationship with God. That's the analogy I use because it gives me a different perspective. But if basically, if another person if you have two people in a relationship and one person is working on their stuff and you're self-aware and that person's self-aware of those things, the resistance is coming from the person. They're not necessarily resisting the relationship, but that's like a byproduct of it. But they're resisting their own inner work that they may be afraid to fear, or maybe afraid to face, or maybe there a lot of times, like I found with myself, like stuff will just come out of nowhere. I'm like, oh, I thought I fixed that already.
Hmm.
So I think it also takes a lot of patience. But if it's a constant loop and it's going nowhere, or like even in something as simple as a conversation, it's like, all right, this conversation's over. I'm gonna go do this. I'll talk to
Hmm.
you later, kind of thing. Like I do that. I mean, I just had that with one of my kids because I was giving advice. I was trying to explain something, and it was just going around in a full circle. Like, but
Hmm.
like, no, it takes the other person to if they don't see it, there has to be some type of eventually a breakthrough in their own mind to say, hold on a minute, maybe what my dad is telling me is true. I just don't want to accept it. Or, I'm guilty of the same thing. I've been there when someone's telling me something and I'm like, whatever. But the unfortunate thing for us as humans is it takes time.
Yeah.
It could take years.
It
But
can,
you know,
we talked about it the other day, though, it can, but I also realized that you can shift, in a sense, your reality, who you are in an instant if you commit to making the change. So as I said, when I went into that relationship that I was in, and I didn't see a lot of my stuff. I didn't understand why I did what I did in relationships in the past. And then it's like I read the book Letting Go by David Hawkins. We talked about it last episode, and that really started to bring to surface very quickly me being able to see my patterns and my things and where it all originated. So then I went to the root of it, and I was able to get rid of it, at least identify it very quickly, and then practice within like months of just like exiting any of my like old thinking habits and the way I responded to things and fear and all that stuff, right? And I was able to do that fairly quickly. Um, and that's why I try to tell people, I'm like, it doesn't have to take a long period of time. If you make the decision and commit to it, like, will you have things come back? Like you said, like you spoke of a little bit ago. Do I have things that I feel like I was like that I was pretty good in? Like, oh, I'm good here now. And then like a little moment comes up, but what I'm able to do is catch it in the moment, replace that thought, and not let it go down a rabbit hole to where I'm now creating a story around that thought that again is not serving me, right? And that's allowed me to be able to, when I was in that relationship, feel free and not have these worries and concerns that I used to. um and that's kind of what I shared with her was, practice these things. Here's these tools: the pattern interruption, the mantra use, the daily journaling, listening to things that are only feeding your good, not feeding that bad wolf that you don't want to feed, right? And I go, and I promise you it works, it'll happen. um but I think that's the thing, right? Is a lot of people are so fearful of feeling, especially it's like they felt the pain in their past, like in the earlier on in their life, and they're like, oh my gosh, I never want to feel that again. But if you don't open yourself up to living life fully, and which may give you experiences that aren't favorable, you'll never know what you could have done. You know what I'm saying? And that's the way I look at it. Is I'm like, man, I want to be my best and have a heart wide open. And if my heart gets broken, like I said, I think off camera, um, you'll learn to love a little bit more deeply every time it does. You know. So.
Yeah, I think it's kind of twofold because in order for an individual to open up, it also takes an individual to release these fears, these worries, these things. And that's a conversation I had with someone over the weekend is, I mean, I understand you feel this way, but you have to find a way to let it go and move forward.
Hmm.
And I think a part of a relationship is like, obviously, it takes two to make it work. And yeah, that friction is created when one person is doing it and the other person doesn't see it. But the one person who's struggling might not even understand they have to release it. Like, and that could be something as simple as crying,
Hmm.
you know? Like, uh, like I had a conversation with my wife about like some old army buddies wanted to meet up with me, and they're still in that army life, and I was like, no, that's not me anymore. Like, I'm a different person now, and it's not even anything personal.
No.
It's just it took me years to like release a lot of that stuff, and it's the same concept as if you have past trauma or past negative things. We all have a shared power with our creator, right? With God. We have the power, like you said, to change our life in an instant.
Hmm.
I've experienced it personally, but if we don't identify the part of ourselves that's still hanging on to these things, then that change is going to either not happen or come with a heck of a lot of resistance.
Hmm.
Because when you have a negative whatever it is attached to you, so to speak, that if you think about universal laws and good, evil, black, white, dark, light, if something has a hold on you, it's going to fight like hell to stay on. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? and you may not even realize it.
Absolutely.
So it's hard to give a definite answer, because I do agree that sometimes absence makes the heart grow fonder, but I think from what I've experienced myself is that when God really wants to develop you, he will isolate you.
100%.
100%. I've been there.
Yep. Well, like I told you, that's been me like the last, I mean, it's happened in my life in the past, but it's definitely happened in the last couple of months where I've felt that need to just be more isolated. Like I still love going and being around people, but like the majority of my week, other than when I'm out doing stuff with people, like, I will spend a lot more time like by myself, meditating, contemplating, journaling, listening to things that are, nourishing me. Um, and that really allows me to see myself more clearly, right, and clear the energy and do all of that. So yeah, that's the thing, is I think that, in any way, what I kind of say about a relationship in general is, if it's intended, like anything in this life, right, if anything in this life is intended for you, and
Hmm.
that's in God's plan, there will be nothing or no one that can stop it, period, right? Short of you killing yourself. Like that's the only that, because otherwise, if it's meant for you, that person's meant for you, that situation, that business, whatever, and God's gonna orchestrate things to make that happen, right?
Yeah, I mean,
And I think
whatever's
I was just gonna say, the illusion that you and I've talked about a lot of, that we think we have control. Ultimately, God's like, yeah, that's what you think, but if this is intended for your journey, it's gonna happen. So.
well, that's there's two things. Is that one is that um, whatever's meant to be in your life is going to be. End of discussion. It might not. It might not happen in the way you believe it should happen, but it's going to happen nonetheless. Just
Absolutely.
like when we talk about prayer or asking for things, God will steer the boat, but you will have to row.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? But the second thing is, I think a lot of people in general have a skewed view of what love means.
Yeah.
And when I think about, like, when I was younger, I thought about it completely different than how I think about it now. Love love is a I think the word love and sacrifice go hand in hand. Because if you think about it, like, if you like what you're describing, in a way, in a way, you're kind of almost sacrificing your own peace to be with someone, but to ultimately help them to learn and grow. So it's a sacrifice because it's worth it in the long run, right? So, for example, if you get in an argument, or like if I get in an argument with my wife or something, and I'm like, okay, I wanted to sit down and watch the football game, but now I'm just thinking about this argument we just had. One thing I do find myself doing a lot, and me and my wife don't argue really anymore at all, is that if there is a type of argument or something, or a disagreement, kind of like how you said, kind of isolate. That's kind of what I do. I'm like, all right, let me step away from this, because we're not getting anywhere. It's going in that circle or whatever. And then later on in the day or the next day or something, I'll just flat out honestly explain what I meant. Because sometimes I think another thing with relationships that's hard is that a lot of the times the words that we use, we know what we're meaning when we say them, but we don't understand what they sound like to the other person. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? So I think that if you have moments where there's friction, take some time and then come back together and be like, hey, this is what I meant. I understand that you perceived it this way because of maybe the tone of my voice, or the words that I said.
Hmm.
But I think that boils down to listening to understand instead of respond. And then and that kind of diffuses that frustration, like, oh, this is what we meant. Because you ever have a conversation or you're debating something with someone and then you leave the conversation, you're like, oh man, I should have said this. It would have made a heck of a lot more sense to them.
Well, you get more clarity. Yeah.
Right. Clarity.
Mhm.
Clarity. And if the other person doesn't have clarity, then they need to find it.
That's where I think again, like goes back to taking that space, right? And then when you do take the space, like I told you, what I tend to do and I practice now is, although I may be able to see another person's like fear or whatever it is that's coming from them, I look at myself and I'm like, but how can you be better? Like I told you, one of the things I'm working on is just not reacting, right? Like not reacting if someone is in that space and then they kind of bring it onto you is not reacting. And I'm still very much working on that because I can do that oftentimes, but I feel like that's one of the spaces that I created the habit of defense. It was in a romantic relationship. So then when someone, which I now realize someone brings their fear out on you and you've done nothing, you still feel this need to defend, but you shouldn't have to, right? You
Oh,
got to get to a space of not defending. And I'm learning that. I'm practicing it and getting better at that, but I definitely haven't mastered it yet. But I want to because I want to be at a space where it's just like you said, it's basically there's no need for defense or response because then you end up in that vicious circle of the same conversation going nowhere and there's no point in that. It's a waste of two people's valuable energy, right? And we
no,
always have to be able to look at ourselves first and say, what can I do differently to shift right now so that this isn't a repetitive problem, right? But both people have to be willing to do that.
yeah.
Because there could be one that, there could be one that's like, yeah, I'm willing. Hey, I got it. I'm doing it. I'm doing the work. And the other one's just like, yeah, and then you're the problem. No, you got to look at yourself. Like we have to look at ourselves always and really look at the picture clearly. Like that's the other thing is I always say like look at the picture clearly and say like, okay, are you so like in that scenario that I was in, I'm not putting blame on her at all. It's more of so like when I found out and realized my things and I realized I wasn't starting any issue just randomly. I wasn't there was no behaviors causing problems. There was not me just like randomly bringing something up. It was just living. But then I'm just living and I'm living with integrity and then me just living my life would trigger this other person, and that's what I said. I was like, so you got to be able to look at yourself and be like, wait a minute, why is like him just doing or her just doing the basic, like whatever it would be in their life, right? Why is this bothering me so much? Because they're not actually doing anything wrong. They're just literally living their life. So my fear keeps coming up. What do I got to look at?
Well, that's actually a very good point because when you, especially whether you're in a relationship or you're starting a new relationship or whatever, that's that's inherently going to be a part of it. Is both people may come in with walls up
Yeah, 100%.
because you want to protect yourself, and it takes a little bit of giving yourself grace and the other person. And I would say that, like the last episode, we mentioned judgment. And if you have one side, the worst thing that you can do in a relationship is play the blame game, which you pretty much acknowledge, like, what can I do better? What can I change? So, but it's difficult to, uh, the other person has to do the same thing.
Hmm.
Because, like, I've been seeing a lot of stuff about Adam and Eve and about how, society puts men first and blah, 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 and men are leaders and women aren't and all this stuff. But the more I learned, the more I realized that women and men are supposed to be side by side,
Hmm.
not one in the front, not one in the back.
Absolutely.
So it's, I think a lot of it stems from too, like, expectations. Like, what does a relationship look like? I think a lot of people have unrealistic expectations of what a authentic, real relationship looks like. It's not a Disney movie.
Exactly.
It's not like, oh, let me just. spend every second of my day with you. Like those, like those movies where,
Mm-hmm.
where they, the couples gets together and they are like on top of each other all night.
Mm-hmm.
My
Mm-hmm.
wife and I are like, I could never sleep like that. Like if you're
Yeah.
on me, like no, like simple,
Yeah.
simple, silly stuff like that, unrealistic. Like no, I get too hot, it gets uncomfortable. Get off me, like,
Yeah.
but
Well,
I
that's the
think,
thing is I think people have to look at like what I was gonna say is getting in like say you're coming into a new relationship even after you've been in one, but coming into a new relationship or looking at your relationship, whatever the case is each person should really deeply look at what do I actually want in a relationship? Who am I first and foremost? What do I like authentically? Who am I authentically? And what do I want to be? And what do I want to have in a relationship? And then have that discussion at the very beginning of like getting to know each other. Like, hey, this is kind of what I'm hoping for. Like, I don't have all these wild expectations of you. It's just literally this is what I'm hoping for. This is what I really would like some, some main points that you really want in a relationship. And then both people honestly look at it and say, do I think I can give them that? Because they're asking for X, Y, and Z. And if you look at yourself and be like, well, that's not going to work for me, then you don't even have to go years into trying to figure it out. You can just be like, hey, we kind of identified from the beginning that it's probably not going to work out. You know what I mean? Or hey, sure, I can try. I can't promise you I'll be perfect, but I can try. You know what I mean? And then you let it at that point naturally unfold the way it wants to. But I feel like that's something I know I had never done that in the past, is had that discussion and be like, this is really what I'm hoping for. What are you hoping for? And do we think that's going to work? I think people, you get in that, like they always say, the honeymoon phase where your brain's all happy and full of chemicals because you're like, oh, this new person, yay. And then it's like the blinders are on and you're just, both of you are ignoring your own stuff and the fact that maybe you won't even really like each other. And that's where you got to like slow down, put the brakes and be like, all right, let's have this talk and let's see if this is even worth us going forward, you know?
well, no, exactly. I think that just as important as it would be for maybe a little bit of absence or isolation, talking is probably right up there as one of the most important things. Because if you're in any relationship, whether it's married, not married, whatever, if you don't, it's just like me with work. Like one of my big things, communication.
Hmm.
And I think that not all women, but generally speaking, some women think that you're a mind reader. Like I've had that conversation. I'm like, if something's bothering you, or if you want something done, you need to tell me. Just say it. Because men were more direct. We're more like, what's going on? If you don't say, I want this to be done, please, or whatever, or can you whatever do this, then it's
I've
not
most
going to get done. You
I've
know?
most definitely had those conversations in those scenarios where it was like, wow, like, but just tell me what you're feeling, tell me what you're thinking, tell me what you need. You know what I mean? And I'll let you know if I can fulfill that or whatever the case is. Um, the other thing that I've learned too, though, is I think that people in general, they look for their happiness to come from their partner when your happiness actually comes from yourself. Like your partner can help add to that. They can add to the journey. They can help lift you up and you lift them up. But if you can't lift yourself up and you're looking for everybody else outside of you to bring you your joy and validate you, you're going to have a hell of a time in a relationship. You know what I mean? That's why it's really good to be very sound with yourself and be very happy with yourself. Then you can get in a relationship and be like, cool, you have added to my journey and I've added to your journey, but we're not each other's journey. We're not each other like that's it's like looking at it at the other person like you're my everything. It's like, okay, uh, wait a minute, because you still have all these other facets of your life that you have to put energy into, right? So yes, I love you, you're great, but there's other areas of life, and so you got to be able to validate and love yourself and be good to go when I'm out doing whatever else I'm doing, you're out doing whatever you're doing. You know what I mean? I think people miss that a lot. They look at their
Yeah.
partner and they're like, you're now my everything. It's like, whoa, breathe.
Yeah, that's a very, I love that you brought up validation. Because for me, I notice in a lot of people that they get into a relationship so that they can have validation. That's like one of the number one causes of problems. And then, or it's kind of similar to expectations, where you're expecting to feel validation within yourself because you're in a relationship. And exactly what you just said, you need, just like how it's not up to other people to make you happy, it's not up to other people to validate you either. Which brings me back to relationship with God. Some people who don't understand this will, oh, he's being a jerk or whatever. No, it's about where do you, if you sought validation from outside resources your whole life, you're never going to be happy.
No,
Never.
not at all.
Not ever. If you seek validation from a relationship, from a job, from a habit, from whatever, there's still going to be something inside of you that says this isn't enough.
Absolutely.
So, yeah,
I
that's
did it. I
a
did it,
tough
man. I
one,
mean,
man.
no, I did it. I mean, I looked at that with myself, in years past in my life with, many different things that I was looking for validation from. And I definitely believe relationships was one of them. And then when I realized that, I really realized that in this last year and a half or more now, where I'm like, I don't need any validation from a relationship. I don't need a relationship. Like, I'm grateful if I have a great one, cool, but I don't need to be validated by anybody or anything external. You know, I know my creator is like, dude, you're fucking whole and complete all the time, like, and then just keep growing, right? So I don't need anybody else to. It's kind of like we often mention Wayne Dyer. It's like Wayne Dyer used to say. He goes, "When you're free of anybody's good or bad opinion, then you're actually free, right? You don't need anybody to pat you on the back, and you don't care if someone says you're shit." And that's exactly like how I feel. I'm like, I don't need anybody to say I'm good or bad. Thank God, like I'm at that place where I'm just like, I know I'm sound with my creator, and I know that I'll have days where I could have been a little bit better, but it's like I say, what do I do though? Like at the end of my day, I self-evaluate, and I'm like, what could you have done better in today? So like with the like, not being in a relationship right now, but like even just trying to have that friendship, it's looking at things where it's like, well, what did you do that wasn't the greatest today? Oh, you responded like it. You were reactive, right? And then because I'm always being aware of it, it's like, so now when a scenario with anybody comes up like that again, I get the opportunity to do it much better next time around, right? And sometimes that takes much practice, right? You know what I mean? But eventually, if your goal is to master these things about yourself, you'll get there.
But I guess a final point I'll make is that I was at a period of time in my relationship where I didn't even realize it, but I think a part of relationships is also acceptance. And there was a period of time for me where I was like, kind of being a baby, like, oh, this is life. And then it's like when you have two people come together, that's kind of where that sacrifice comes in a little bit, because it's like we signed up for this. So we're either going to make it work or we're not. So you have to be, no one's perfect. And just like, we just put an episode out on judgment. A lot of people judge each other in their own relationships or have those expectations or seek validation.
Mm-hmm.
But along with that, if you truly love someone and and both parties want to make it work, you have to accept each other for your little quirks, for your little, your little goofiness, your little tantrums you might throw or whatever, what bothers you, what doesn't bother you. I think a lot of it comes with accepting that, like, for me, I was like, all right, I accept this. I did sign up for this. I made the choice. It's a choice. Like for me, I was like, I made the choice. I was like, okay, I need to stop being an idiot and do what I'm supposed to do. But yeah, again, if both people aren't willing to do that, then it's going to be a rough go.
Yeah, because it just takes both sides. So I believe if there's both folks just focusing on their own things that they need to release, they need to heal, they need to work on, they need to improve upon, which we all have work to do, no matter who we are, we all have work to do. If you're both doing that, you're both growing individually, and then you're going to grow as a couple, and you're going to have a much more cohesive union, right? Where you're just kind of in a flow state. That's why I tell people. Sometimes you hear people say like, "Oh, relationships are always going to be like you said. You and your wife don't really argue anymore." That to me, I really believe everybody can get to that state where once you've learned yourself enough, and then you've learned each other, and you love each other unconditionally, you can live a union of like very rare disagreement, right? And I believe that that's how it should be because I don't think that we were ever meant to come together and be in a relationship and be like, oh, this is great. We fight all the time. Like, no, like why, you know what I mean? Like, it was like that was never the case, right? So it's like, no, figure your shit out and then you won't have fights and then you'll really love being around each other and having a great time all the time, right? Because I tell people, you learn in challenging times in this life, but I don't believe that our creator was like, all I want you to do is go there and have challenges all the fucking time. Like, no. Why do we have all these wonderful things that we get to enjoy? Great food, travel, other people, whatever, right? We have that to enjoy it. So life's not supposed to be one big challenge. Figure your shit out and then let life flow the rest of the time you're here, you know? So that's just my thought, my
Hey,
opinion.
all the heavens, all the hells are within you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You create it, my friend.
Yep. And sometimes, like we talked about before, a lot of people. Well, one final thought is that a lot of people don't even realize that they're getting in their own way,
Oh, 100%.
and that goes the same thing for relationships.
Yes.
Like you hold
100%.
on to the past or worry about the future. What second or third order effect is that having on the person you live with or the person you're
Exactly.
dating?
Exactly.
It's
That's
it's
like I
like
said, be here now, present moment. If you could practice living in the present moment and you ask yourself that question, does the past actually exist? Is that still happening? No, they're not repeating any behavior. They're not doing okay, cool. And the future doesn't exist. So why am I anxious about something that has not happened, that might happen, but has not happened? I can be right here with whoever your partner right now and be like, we're having one hell of a great time, and you make that day a good day, and then you stack the next day as a good day, and the next day is a good day. Before you know, you have 6 months, 6 years, whatever of greatness, as opposed to continuing to bring up what has happened in the past or what might most likely will never show up in the future.
well, every day is a new chance to do it all over again and to do better.
Absolutely.
But yeah, let us know what you think in the comments. We've been more active lately, going to be more consistent. Follow us on social media, on Instagram, Facebook. We're going to be working on getting this on Spotify. If you have an idea for what you want us to talk about in a future episode, go ahead and comment that, and we will catch you in the next one.
Sending you guys love.